We offer you deep historical information from history on YouTube channel. Subscribe. Now don't forget to turn on notifications.
The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the lost wonders of the ancient world. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, known and admired since Hellenistic times. These magnificent terraced gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon for his wife, Queen Amytis. Unfortunately, this legendary structure was completely destroyed in the 1st century AD, and there is no definitive evidence of its existence. History of the site. Construction of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon began in the 6th century BC and took about 20 years. The gardens were built next to the king's palace in the city of Babylon on the banks of the Euphrates. They were built by Babylon's most skilled architects and engineers. Design and construction. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon consisted of a terrace structure. Each terrace was covered with a waterproof layer and filled with soil. Various trees, shrubs, flowers and vines were grown on the terraces. Irrigation was provided by a system of chain pumps using water from the Euphrates River. Aim. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were built to bring the greenery and coolness of the mountainous region, the home of Queen Amytis, to Babylon. This magnificent structure was also a place of rest and recreation for the royal family and the Babylonian elite. Myth and reality. Information about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon comes from texts written by ancient Greek and Roman historians. These texts describe the gardens as magnificent and fascinating. However, it is not known how accurate these descriptions are. Some historians argue that the gardens were exaggerated and mythologized, while others argue that the structure was in fact an extraordinary feat of engineering. Extinction. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were destroyed by earthquakes and wars in the 1st century BC. The remains of the structure were discovered by archaeologists in the 19th century. However, these remains do not fully reflect the splendor and beauty of the gardens. Conclusion. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are a lost marvel of antiquity. This legendary structure is an example of how far mankind's engineering and architectural skills have advanced. The story of the gardens continues to fascinate and intrigue to this day. More information. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are also referred to in some sources as the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis. It is estimated that the terraces of the gardens were up to 20 meters high. It is thought that hundreds of different types of plants were grown in the gardens. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon have been featured in many literary works, including Shakespeare's Othello and Voltaire's Candide. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the mysterious story of the lost wonder of the ancient world. Full story. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are one of the most legendary and mysterious structures in human history. Considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, these terraced gardens were built by King Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon for his wife Queen Amytis. Unfortunately, this magnificent structure was completely destroyed in the 1st century AD, and there is no definitive evidence of its existence. History and construction. Construction of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon began in 605 BC and took about 20 years. The gardens were built in the northwest corner of the king's palace in the city of Babylon, on the banks of the Euphrates. They were built by the most skilled architects and engineers in Babylon, a marvel of design and engineering. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon was a massive structure consisting of 7 levels of terraces. Each terrace was covered with a waterproof layer and filled with soil. A variety of trees, shrubs, flowers and vines were grown on the terraces. The height of each level is estimated to be about 2.5 meters, and the total width is about 100 meters. Irrigation was provided by a system of chain pumps using water from the Euphrates River. This complex system ensured the transport of water to the terraces and the irrigation of the plants. It is thought that slaves or animals were used to operate the pumps, the splendor of the gardens. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon were a dazzling structure, not only from an engineering point of view, but also from an aesthetic one. The plants growing on the terraces gave the gardens a paradisiacal appearance. There were also marble statues, waterfalls and pools in the gardens, the Queen's Desire and the Monument to Love. According to legend, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon were built to bring the greenery and coolness of the mountainous region, the home of Queen Amytis, to Babylon. King Nebuchadnezzar II built this magnificent structure to satisfy his wife's longing and to leave her a monument of love. Architectural features of the building. The walls of each terrace were made of fired bricks and layers of asphalt. Behind the walls were arches and buttresses that supported the earth and provided the slope of the terraces. The layers of soil had a special system for draining water. Irrigation channels and pipes carried water to every corner of the terraces. Stairs and ramps facilitated movement between the terraces. The gardens were surrounded by high walls, and the entrances were guarded. Plants grown in the gardens. It is estimated that hundreds of different types of plants were grown in the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. These plants include the following: date palms, cedar trees, cypress trees, pomegranate trees, fig trees, grapevines, rose flowers, lavender flowers, jasmine flowers, mint thyme, flowers, rosemary. How the gardens worked. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon required a great deal of manpower to operate. Gardeners tended the plants and watered them. Slaves or animals were used to run the pumps and carry the water. Guards protected the gardens from thieves and unwanted visitors. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a mythical structure revived in our imagination. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, one of the most mysterious and fascinating structures in history. These terraced gardens, shrouded in legend, are still alive in our imagination, even though they have disappeared. I see this legendary structure not only as an engineering marvel, but also as a symbol of love and desire. These gardens, built by King Nebuchadnezzar II for his wife Queen Amytis, are a token of love, built to remind her of her homeland and to make her happy. If I close my eyes and imagine the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, I can see that each of the 7 terraces is full of greenery. Different trees, flowers, and vines grow in harmony on the terraces, creating the appearance of a garden of paradise. The sound of the gurgling pools, the shade of the marble statues, and the scent of the flowers blooming in the fresh air make these gardens unique. As I walk through the gardens, I feel the homesickness of Queen Amytis and the love of King Nebuchadnezzar for her. There seem to be traces of love and hard work in every corner of this magnificent structure. Although it is sad that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are gone, it is important that this legend inspires us and feeds our imagination. These gardens are an example of how far human engineering has come and how powerful love is. If one day a time machine were invented and I could travel back in time, I would love to see the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It would be an incredible experience to see this legendary structure with my own eyes and experience the wonderful atmosphere. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon is a monument that shows us not only what was possible in the past, but also what is possible in the future. I believe that this legend will continue to inspire us and feed our imagination. Did the Hanging Gardens of Babylon really exist? There is no conclusive proof of the existence of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The remains found in archaeological excavations do not conclusively prove the existence of the gardens. However, these remains give us an idea of the size and splendor of the structure. In addition, these gardens are mentioned in texts written by ancient Greek and Roman historians. In these texts, the gardens are described in a magnificent and fascinating way. In my opinion, it is unlikely that the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are entirely imaginary. It is unlikely that such an elaborate and fascinating structure is just a legend. However, it is also possible that the gardens described in the texts are more exaggerated and mythologized than they actually are. Historians may have used some exaggeration in order to describe this magnificent structure in an impressive way. In conclusion, although the existence of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is not known for certain, there is a high probability that this legendary structure is real. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, known and unknown. What is known? The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The gardens were built in the 6th century BC by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar II for his wife, Queen Amytis. The gardens were built next to the king's palace in the city of Babylon on the banks of the Euphrates River. The gardens were made up of 7 terraces. Each terrace was covered with a waterproof layer and filled with soil. Various trees, shrubs, flowers and vines were grown on the terraces. Irrigation was provided by a system of chain pumps using water from the Euphrates River. There were also marble statues, waterfalls and pools in the gardens. The construction of the gardens took about 20 years. Although the destruction of the gardens is not known for certain, it is estimated that they were destroyed as a result of earthquakes and wars in the 1st century AD. Unknowns. It is not known exactly what the gardens looked like. How many people worked on the gardens? How did the irrigation system for the gardens work? What kinds of plants were grown in the gardens? How were the gardens maintained? Who used the gardens? When and how did the gardens disappear? Archaeological evidence. There is no conclusive evidence of the existence of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The remains found in archaeological excavations only indicate the location and size of the terraces of the gardens. These remains include the remains of fired bricks, irrigation channels, and pipes. In addition, some sculptures and reliefs found during excavations give an idea of the splendor of the gardens. Historical records. The most important information about the Hanging Gardens of Babylon comes from texts written by ancient Greek and Roman historians. In these texts, the gardens are depicted in a magnificent and fascinating way. However, it is not known how much of these texts are true. The historians may have exaggerated in order to describe this magnificent structure in an impressive way. Conclusion. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are one of the most mysterious and fascinating structures of the ancient world. There is still much that is unknown about this legendary structure. However, archaeological finds and historical records give us an idea of this magnificent structure. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon is an example of how far mankind's engineering skills have advanced and how powerful love is. More information. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are also known as the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis in some sources. It is estimated that the terraces of the gardens were up to 20 meters high. It is thought that hundreds of different types of plants were grown in the gardens. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon have been featured in many literary works, including Shakespeare's Othello and Voltaire's Candide.
We offer you deep historical information from history on YouTube channel. Subscribe. Now don't forget to turn on notifications.